everyone, welcome back to Joanne Tech Lover. I'm Joanne and I'll be doing a Skylake build, which is very exciting. I am in need of a second editing rig and a system for testing parts, so I can't wait to get started. I want to thank NZXT, Asus, G.SKILL, and Intel for sponsoring this build. You guys are awesome! Now then, let's move on to the parts. All these lovely components will be making a home for themselves in the NZXT Noctis 450 PC case. It's black with red LEDs. For more info on the Noctis case, check out my video on the white version. Next up, we have the Asus Strix Gaming Radeon R9 390 graphics card. Asus ROG Maximus 8 Hero motherboard. Check JTail for the video overview of this motherboard. The CPU is the much anticipated Intel Core i7 6700K 4GHz processor. Can't wait to test this out and see how a 4-core fares against a 6-core in terms of rendering. As for memory, I've got the G.SKILL Trident Z DDR4 16GB to 8GB DIMMs with XMP 2.0 support for extreme overclocking. Depending on which memory kit you get, there's potential for overclocking to 4000 MHz. For storage, I'm installing the Intel 750 series PCIe Gen 3 X4 400GB SSD. I'll have to remember to set the PCIe slot to X4 and UEFI, save and exit, then install the OS after. I picked out the WD 2TB Green drive again because it's affordable with a reasonable amount of storage. And finally, here's the CPU cooler I'm using, the NZXT Kraken X61 liquid CPU cooler. And I've got a lot of power here in the NZXT Hail 90 V2 series 1000 watt PSU. I'm adding LED light strips this time, the NZXT sleeved LED kit. Red LEDs, of course, 1 meter with 12 LEDs. And I'm finally going to try Windows 10 Home Edition. Always gotta stay updated with tech. First things first, you'll want to ground yourself so you don't kill any of those pricey components, and I do that by touching the steel side panel of my case. But if you want to be extra careful, you can install a power supply, turn it to off, of course. You can touch a radiator, or if you're extra paranoid, wear a anti-static wristband, but I am not doing that. So far it's worked out for me, so that's great. I believe this is all I will need to build this PC. 2 different kinds of screwdrivers, small cable ties and large cable ties, as well as a wire cutter. That's something new that I got because last time I used scissors and a box cutter and people were like, oh my god. So yeah. I've set the motherboard on the box and I will be installing the CPU first. You'll notice an arrow here on the plastic piece and it will match the arrow on the CPU right here. So you'll know which direction to mount your CPU. And we're going to first move this lever. Very simple. I'm so glad it's not on both sides. It just makes it easier. And then we're going to lift this. Be sure not to touch any of these pins. And of course, when you're removing your CPU, use the utmost care. Touch it by the sides. And I'm going to go ahead and lower the arrow to the corner that it's meant to be. And you just drop it in. And it's good. Okay, we're good. Let's secure the CPU. We're just gonna go ahead and drop this part here. Awesome. And then move this piece back down there. And as you can tell, this plastic cover just popped out by itself. Don't throw this away. You'll need this if for any reason you take your CPU out. You don't want anything to get into the pins. So hold on to that. Now for the memory install, check the user guide to see what the recommended slots are that you should be using. Pull the tabs back and seat this Trident Z memory. And it can only go in one way, so push down on it until you hear that click, and that means it's seated. And now for the second stick, I had to stand up for this, so that's why the lighting looks a little different, but just push down on it. And boom, it has been seated. Make sure it clicks on both sides, yes. And something I have to say is that, this is such gorgeous memory. I mean, look at that cooler and the fins. It matches the Hero board so well. For the LGA 1151 setup, you will need a backplate. Make sure to slide all 4 of these points to the innermost position, and then just match it up to the holes on the back of the motherboard, push it in, and it's easy as pie. I've already installed 2 of the standoffs for the water cooler, and I'm gonna go ahead and just thread these through. And you're going to notice that the backplate is a little bit loose, but don't freak out, as I've read that that's how it's supposed to be. And once we get the water cooler on there, I'm sure it'll be just fine. NZXT recommends a push config when installing your radiator and fans to the top of your case. And I've already installed one fan, and I'm going to go ahead and finish installing the other with these two long fan screws. So let me go ahead and just do that right quick. And something else I really like about this Kraken X61, the fan. And by the way, these are two 140 millimeters over a 280 millimeter radiator, and they have these holes on the sides of the fans where you can thread through the cable for the other fan, and that way you don't have any cables sticking out on the top or the sides. And I really like that because you get way cleaner cable management. The retention ring is really easy to place on there. Simply match up the teeth like so, and then go ahead and twist it. Now once that's done, you'll want to take this plastic clip here, and it will just snap into place in the empty sections. So just press down on it and it should snap into place. There we go. Do you hear that satisfying click? Yep, there we have it. Here's a look at the connectors that come with the X61 cooler. We have the 3-pin connector for the water pump that plugs into a CPU fan header on your motherboard, but since the Hero 8 has a dedicated water pump connector, it's not confusing for you, so that's awesome. There's also two 4-pin connectors for the 140mm fans. Go ahead and plug it into these headers that come with the X61. And what's cool is that they've included two more fan headers for you, and here is a SATA connector for supplemental power. So if you want to go push config and your case can fit it, then go for it. Oops, almost forgot about this USB 2.0 connector that you'll need to plug into your motherboard's USB 2 header in order to control this unit. Be sure to take advantage of NZXT's CAM software so you can monitor your system. I use that on my other system and I think it's really good. The motherboard rear I/O shield is usually difficult to pop in, so I already did that and there it is. I've already installed the radiator and fans to the top of the case, and I usually like my tubing on this side because I don't want any chance of it hitting the rear fan or having to just get rid of the rear fan. And I like that this tubing, while thinner than the last build that I've done, it is more flexible. It's not quite as tough. And you definitely want the NZXT logo to appear straight up. So this is how it will look. I had to remove one of the hard drive trays on the right side in order to more easily slot in the cooler. I may also remove another hard drive tray so that this rubber tubing has a little bit more slack when I'm bending it. We're at the top of the case now where the radiator is mounted, and I just wanted to show you where the screws go. And I've already mounted 6 of the screws. There's 8 total, and you'll want to use a washer as well as a screw to finish installing this. So let's go ahead and do that. Easy enough. I've already placed the motherboard inside the case, and the Noctis 450 comes pre-installed with the standoffs for ATX. And I've screwed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws right now, and what I really like about some cases is that they provide a standoff right there, so it allows you to easily mount your motherboard to the motherboard tray by finding that screw and fitting it. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue screwing in the last 2 screws. Just missing one on this edge right here. Okay, and one more on the other side right here. I've noticed that with the motherboard installed in the case, it's a really snug fit against the top fans. And I've already plugged in the water pump connector, and if I don't move this cable, I'm afraid it might touch the fan. So that's no good, but that shouldn't be a huge problem. I've installed the water block and cold plate onto the CPU, and also put on 2 thumb screws. Now I'm going to secure it even more by placing on the additional 2 thumb screws. And remember how before the back plate was kind of loose with the standoffs on there? Well, once you secure this attachment, it won't move. And I'll show you just how good that is in just a moment. As you can tell, this is not moving. The water block is staying firmly on there, so you're good to go. Wow, there are a lot of captive thumb screws in this case, just means I won't lose anything. Now let's go ahead and attach the power supply. I love how NZXT sent me a white power supply to go with my black and red build. But that's okay because there's a power supply shroud and I'm sure they accounted for that, so it doesn't really matter how it looks. So let's go ahead and slot this configuration in with the attached bracket. Haha, that was easy. Now to secure this with the thumb screws. In order to get the test boot going, I had to plug in some cables such as the 24-pin main power connector, as well as the CPU connector up here, and also plugged in the Asus R9 390 graphics card, and of course its PCIe power cables. Now the graphics card is rather large, so I had to remove some of the drive trays on this side that's being covered by this drive panel, and I kind of wish that I could remove this drive panel by itself so that everything, all the cabling would just be much easier to sort out, but you know, it was doable. I just kind of had to angle the graphics card and seat it that way, and I'll show you in more detail in the next video how to seat this graphics card. I also plugged in the SATA connector for the CPU fans, as well as the 3-pin connector that went into the water pump connector up at the top of the motherboard. I also plugged in this 4-pin fan connector that came with the case that powers the fan hub on the other side of the motherboard tray. That allows all the 3-pin fans that are connected to the hub to run in PWM mode, which is awesome. I was able to test it out and it works. I really like that the power supply is fully modular, so I only need to plug in the cables that I need, and that is to avoid clutter, and of course if there's like all this cable, the cooling probably wouldn't be as efficient. Without further ado, I'm going to power on the power supply, and then I'm going to push the start button. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. There it goes. Ah, the gentle whirring of your system coming to life. There's nothing sweeter. Oh, there it is, ROG. And then you'll notice that it's a CPU fan speed error detected, and I did a little bit of research on this, and it seems it's happened to some other people as well. I took the mouse over to my side so I can use it to navigate the BIOS, but first let's press F1 to continue. After some research, I did find a few ways to get the error message to not appear again, and first way, if it doesn't work for you because it didn't for me, but that is one of the ways, is you go to monitor and then just scroll down with your mouse, go to Q fan configuration, you go to Q fan control and turn it to auto mode. And then you go to, where is it, the lower limit, and then set it to 200. You'll notice that when I turn it to auto, in real time it adjusted the fan speed so it is louder now. For those of you who don't know what the lower limit is, it's a warning message that will appear when the limit is reached. That didn't work, so I just put it back in PWM mode, and instead what I had to do was go back here and go up, and in the same monitor tab I found CPU fan speed. So I clicked this area and clicked ignore, and then I went to exit and save and reset. Okay, and the system will reset itself and you shouldn't get that message. Let's go into Q fan control. This is where you could set your fans to be DC powered. And as you can see, it's running at 100% I believe, and it's pretty loud, but let's take it back to PWM. Ah, much better. I really like how user-friendly this BIOS is. It's just really easy to navigate with my mouse, and haven't really used the keyboard all that much except to get into the F1 since the first bad boot. I'll be installing the drives in the next video, and remember how I said the Intel SSD required a PCIe Gen 3 X4 slot? Well, in addition to that, I also said that we need to change the slot to X4 because right now it's an auto and we don't want it to go to X2 or whatnot. So we're gonna go into the advanced tab and then go to onboard devices configuration, and in here the PCIe X4 slot, it even says the black one, so you know exactly which one it is. It's an auto. We are going to move it to X4 mode, and then of course you will exit and then save. Well, that wraps it up for this video on my Skylake build part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, which is cable management, as well as case LEDs and the completed build. And of course, I hope it'll be clean for you guys. Anyway, if you like what you saw and you want to see more like it, be sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe buttons, as well as follow me on social media. Joanne Tech Lover Facebook fan page, Joanne Tech Lover again on Twitter, and Joanne Tech Lover once more on Instagram. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.